last video I discussed a little trick that I do where I put a slightly softer bushing into the front truck of my Gullwing Sidewinder setup, and this gives me a very carvy feel and a very divey feel in my ride. With this video, what I thought I would do is discuss a little bit more about finding the right Durometer bushing for you. The bushings are these little rubber bits over here, and I thought it would be a good idea to discuss a little bit more about how the bushings affect the ride and what a typical setup of those bushings should be, and how you go about setting up your trucks for the best ride style. With the Gullwing Sidewinder setup, because the trucks are double kingpin, the whole goal of the truck is obviously to maximize the lean and maximize the turn of the truck. So ideally what you want to do is you want to find a bushing that is not too hard but also not too soft, so you don't have to over tighten the truck in order to compensate for the softness of the bushing, and you don't want to over loosen the truck in order to compensate for the hardness of the bushing. So the whole point of getting the right bushing set up is to find that maximum resistance. So as you lean into the truck, you're not kind of falling over on the truck, but you also don't have to put excess amount of pressure into the dive and into the turn in order to make the trucks lean over. You want to find that right balance for you, and that balance is going to be based primarily on your weight and primarily on the kind of riding that you want to do. So when we're talking about bushings, there's obviously two things to consider. One is the size. So obviously the size dictates what truck they can fit into. Luckily, the Gullwing Sidewinders take a traditional skateboard size bushing, which means you can find these at pretty much any skate shop or online very easily. And secondly is the Durometer. So bushing Durometer is basically just a measurement of how hard or soft your bushings are going to be. So for instance, when you look at a packaging for bushings, when you're buying some bushings in the shops, you're going to find they either come with a 78A, 89A, 95A. This is basically just a reference to how hard the urethane is that they create the bushing with. So here I have a 95A, and it's quite a hard bushing. I can't really squeeze this at all. Yeah. And here is a 89A, and it's a little bit softer and a little bit easier to squeeze. So what that basically means is if I put the softer bushing into my trucks, I'm going to be able to turn a lot easier, but obviously that is going to affect the stability. So what you want to do, you want to put your bushings in, tighten your trucks up just enough so nothing's really jiggling around, and then take it for a ride. And ultimately what you want when you're testing out your bushings and when you're getting that right feeling is that as you lean into the carve, you shouldn't feel a lot of resistance and the truck should just turn over, but it shouldn't fall over. So it shouldn't feel like you don't have anything underneath you. You should feel like you're able to turn to exactly the point you want to turn, and then there's enough resistance holding you in that position that you don't have to counter steer to maintain that. Once you have that set up, you've pretty much found the correct bushing for you. A tip for the Gullwing Sidewinder trucks is once you've found your correct Durometer bushing, put in a slightly lighter bushing. So for instance, I'm riding my trucks a 95A Durometer, and I'm putting an 89A in the front truck roadside. And what this does is it creates that very surf skate, very divey feeling. So you're turning from the front of the truck, and this is ultimately going to increase the overall ride and overall surfy feeling that you want to try and get out of Gullwing Sidewinders. With Sidewinder trucks, the whole point of these is that you maximize the turn. You know, they're double kingpin, which means there's essentially a double axis of turn, if that makes sense. You don't want to over tighten your bushings ever, because you want to gain the max amount of benefit out of having the double kingpin system. And once you get used to that feeling, and once you set up your durometers to exactly what's right for you, that's when you get the most amount of enjoyment out of these trucks.